you think about the competitive set? Feels like that's changed quite a bit since you began at the firm. How do you see it today? How do you see our standing?
Well, in the market, look, finance is about, look, I remember when I first came into this building, and I was a little older than you, because older than the people in the audience, because I practiced law first, and I came in, I was 28 or 29 when I started here, and I had no idea what an investment bank did. I just didn't know. I mean, what's in it, and I remember going up in the elevator in that time, in the building we were in at that time, they had the floors on the top, like in a department store, and underneath they said, preferred stock trading, convertibles, like every floor was different, like it was like sporting goods, lingerie, this, that. Like you go into a department store, and I remember thinking, like, I don't know what these things are. And, and that's an important thing, and some of you don't even know really what gets, what we do and what gets done here. So I would say the way the market's evolved, we're still doing, it always evolved. In other words, the market changed, the financial crisis, a lot of regulation, and things changed, but they were always changing. When I got here in, the firm in like 1982, by 1985, it was different than what was going on in 1982, and it was always felt like there was something dramatic happening that was a one-off thing. It's like they have the game of the century in every sport, like every 3 years. So when I started, it was globalization. When I started at Goldman Sachs, which was not in the 1800s, I mean, it's a long time ago by your standards, but like, this in people's lifetime, but in the 80s, there were fixed exchange rates in Europe. There were current, you had, some of the countries had domestic, the domestic Belgian franc and the internationally traded Belgian franc. In Europe, you can't imagine this. Goldman Sachs couldn't get a seat on the London Stock Exchange. It was restricted to British merchant banks, nor in Japan. That didn't happen until the late 80s, like 1989 or something called Big Bang, where they opened up their markets. And so when I first started, I caught the wave of globalization, which you take for granted here. Before we went public, small balance sheet firm, no balance sheet firm in a lot of ways, giving advice, but other institution called commercial banks would do the financing. We were largely domestic, not international, mostly advisors, not principals. And that changed, and there's always change, always evolution, and that continues today. And if you just woke up or you just came of age and you're just looking at the market, you think, wow, and everyone will tell you, this is a moment of radical change. Well, it's always a moment of radical change. It's the financial markets. The financial markets are the cutting edge of what everybody else wants to accomplish in their industry. You finance innovation in every industry. You pick winners and try to avoid losers in every industry. Our investing clients, pools of capital, come to us because they think we have a good sense of what should be financed, in other words, what's going to work. Sure. And they come to us in a way, which is a very hard thing to get right all the time, because they think we have at least, or maybe a better grip on the future, because predicting what's going to work and what's not going to work is not that easy. So everybody jokes, of course, millennials are, of course, great users of the technology, and the older folks fumble with these things and, hit it, use it to drive in nails, use their phones to drive in nails in the world. But at the end of the day, in this company, we're the ones that are deciding to not only guess that this technology will work, but this is the company that you bet on in the context of 10 companies that have very similar technologies. And that's really putting your money where your mouth is. And if you're good at that over time, other investors come in because they say, well, if Goldman's going to do this, we're going to, and as a principal in using its money and its reputation, then, I'm going to go along with them because they have a track record. Now, we really have stuck to doing that kind of stuff. I'd say one of the things, you question about what's the competitive dynamic. I'd say going back a few years, there were 5 or 6, if you go back in time a little bit more, 7 or 8 companies that were really investment banks. That's really what investment banks do. They intermediate between the people who need capital and the people who have capital, and we put our imprimatur on the ones we think are going to work. We invest along with our investors. It's one thing we do. We advise, we finance them with our own money, and we securitize that investment and sell it to other investors, and basically are involved in that process. You know, we're kind of focused on the innovative, cutting edge part of all the things we're doing and across industries.
So you said two things that I think might be surprising to the folks in this room and on the video. You were a lawyer, not trained in quote unquote CEO.
That's a shock. Everybody's a lawyer. It's America.
And you also came to Goldman Sachs not really understanding what it was you were going to do and what the firm did. Why did you come? And why have you stayed?
Life is quirky. I'm sure all of you have your lives planned out, and the one thing I can absolutely guarantee is it won't work out that way. Because just things happen. First of all, the world changes and the world evolves, so whatever plans you're making, it's based on a static world that won't be there because things will happen. And you'll change. Or maybe you won't even change. Maybe you're just misidentifying yourself now and you don't know, which is a perfectly appropriate way to be when you're young or my age. Because, who knows? So you don't know. So I probably went to law school because like my third grade teacher, like I was arguing in class one day, my third grade teacher is, gosh, you're like a Philadelphia lawyer. I didn't even know what that was, but for all of you, who don't know what that was like, in the colonial America, the great constitutional cases were fought, Zenger by a Philadelphia, and that was an expression, a Philadelphia lawyer. I don't think it's used much now, but it stuck with me, so I guess I'm destined to be a lawyer. So because of that comment, I always thought I was going to be a lawyer, so I went to law school. And then when I came out, I came out with, I didn't come out with a strong sense of what I wanted to do. I came out with a strong sense that I had a lot of student loans. And so then you have to go, and then you have to like pay them. And so then it seemed, so then guess what? I worked at a law firm for 4 or 5 years, and I liked it. I mean, I didn't hate it. That's a strong compliment. I didn't hate it. It was, it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I was involved in litigation and tax, and the thing was, when I was in a law firm, I would, you'd be working on a dispute. So it could be like 1978, which sounds, again, prehistory, and I'd be working on a contested matter, the facts of which all occurred in 1969. Actually, I was doing really cool. I was doing litigation on, in the film and the recording industry, and so they were arguing over royalties and things for like Beach Boy tapes from 1969, but they were arguing about this stuff in 1979. So you'd go back in time and look at, and I'd be assigned to this thing, and I'd be viewing files and cases of things of everything that happened 10 years ago. It didn't matter what happened in the newspaper. It didn't matter what was going on. They could have dropped a bomb. I'd still be litigating what was what somebody had said in 1969 or didn't say, or what their sales were in 1971. And so you'd work late at night. You'd be squarely writing a brief, and then whatever time you stopped, whether it was 11 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning, you put your pen down, you go home, and then you come back the next day, and you go back exactly to where it was. The pen wouldn't have moved, and you'd pick up at that point and keep on going, no matter. And, I wanted to do something that just felt like it was, I wasn't thinking that time of having an influence on world events. I was more thinking I wanted to be influenced by world events. And so, then, I came to, this firm in Wall Street, and then all of a sudden, no matter what I was doing in a day, no matter what my priorities were, no matter whether I worked late or not, whenever I left work the night before, by the time I came in the next day, the Chancellor of Germany might have sneezed, tanks may have gone across some border, somebody may have made a bid for a company in some industry, which changed the whole dynamics of that industry and related in whatever I thought was my priorities Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, they were going to be a little bit different based upon what happened. Like I had to read the newspaper. I was afraid to come to work not having read the newspaper. And that was, that was why I was, attracted to it. And a lot of this is after acquired information. I still think I had the nub of that in mind. But of course, now I know that's exactly what this is. This is an industry where, and again, if you do it well and you work at the right kind of place that's influential and important, you not only get, you not only have the satisfaction of being influenced by what's happening and the need to know what's happening, you get to have an influence on this. One day you're reading the paper, and what are the things today that are going to really affect me? And the next day, you can't wait to see the paper because you know there's going to be an article about what you did yesterday and what you were working on yesterday. So that's that was what the attraction was, and that's that kind of gets you get seduced by that, and it gets a little addictive.
So you like that intellectual curiosity, that dynamic environment where you've got to ebb and flow with what's happening. Arguably, you could.
I like the relevance of it.
And the relevance of it, and arguably you could do that at other financial institutions, but you've chosen to stay here. What is it about Goldman Sachs that kept you here specifically, and what do you think it's about our culture that's unique?
Look, I'm sure if we were sitting in a different place, I'd be telling you why I was really, really happy I came to that place. You don't get to try on 14 different suits before you pick it. Even if you had an interview, you wouldn't know what it was and how you live there. At the end of the day, you live life. There's value to brands and reputation because it does, maybe in some cases it's not fair, and maybe some cases it distorts your awareness of things, because life would be greater if you discovered everything for yourself, but you don't live long enough to discover everything for yourself. And so sometimes you work a little bit off brand and reputation. People go to, Ivy League schools or fancy schools or this program or this because they're attracted by the history and the opinions of others and the patterns that others have had who've gone there. And you do that in some cases for schools, and you do it for the place where you work. So look, there's some people who are iconoclasts that want to work by themselves, and you can have a great life doing that, and for whom the highest value would be to sit with an assistant, by a screen. I was going to say cathode ray tube and show my age. By a screen.
That really would.
Yeah, that really would. Everybody walk out. But and that's the highest game. But I'm an institutional person. I like the influence, the relevance, the importance of working in where you're doing, you can't do big important stuff, where the 4 or the 5 things that are going to be in the Wall Street Journal that day you're going to be involved in. You can't do that at a totally small place. But I wanted a place, and I looked at the effectiveness of the place and what were the career paths of people who went there, both in terms of what their jobs were when they worked here, but also what their lives were like on the other side. And so, you look at the famous alumni who've come through this place and the relevance that those people maintained. And it was the only place I got a job offer anyway, so amazing. Actually, I didn't get a job offer. I got turned down by Goldman Sachs, which of course fed my appreciation and respect for the firm. Because had they hired me, I would have thought much, much less of them than I just expressed now. I finally got a job at J. Aaron and Company, which is a commodity firm that around the time I was applying, doing this, got acquired by Goldman Sachs. So I showed them.
There you go.
And so for a long time, it was J. Aaron division. And for the first 5 years after Goldman Sachs acquired J. Aaron, we were in a separate building, walled off. And, people used to come like it was like coming to the zoo or something.
We used to come, and there was the coffee tasting.
Yeah, we had commodities, including soft commodities, and we had a coffee tasting room. And so people from Goldman Sachs used to come to J. Aaron and bring their clients to watch people. You go to a dentist's office where you take something and then you spit it out, and that's what coffee tasters do all day long, and it's really quite disgusting, but but necessary for the business because you literally have to taste it to grade it.
So you touched on a couple other themes, technology and how that has evolved, obviously quite rapidly. Even in this group's young age, they've seen technology advances. And you've talked about the need to really be on top of global themes, information, deal flow, et cetera. How do you manage that today? When you get up in the morning, what's the first thing you do to try to get yourself oriented with all those things that happened over the past, probably in your case, 5 to 6 hours at most?
I open the refrigerator and I eat cold whatever somebody in my family left over from the night before. That's the first thing I do. You're going to have to be, flexible and nimble in your life. That's the characteristic you want to get. It's not important whether you know what the product is of the du jour, or what's hot and what's not, or how to execute this particular thing. You need to learn business, and you need to learn how to question and have an open mind. You need to know the process of thinking about things. You notice how people can go around and be an investor in this industry, turn around and without doing anything, be a great investor in another industry, or some CEO who one day is running Ford Motor Company, then can run Boeing, or different industries. Because it's not, the most important thing is not the particular characteristics of the particular industry or thing. It's how to be a good CEO, just like it's how to have presentation skills, how to be a good manager, how to be a good subordinate, how to be a good partner, how to use people, how to be usable by people, and those are the things that you have to learn. Now, you can only learn it. You can't learn it abstractly, and you can't really learn it in school. You have to learn it by doing, but you have to take those lessons and extrapolate it. So, the things that I did in the markets, the markets and the context of even in investment banking and advisory, those are entirely different things 30 years ago than they are today. They're different 5 years ago than they are today. So everything is, we talk about time of great change. Yeah, okay, every time is a time of great change. And I will tell you, and the technology is driving it, and you don't know, everybody always remembers getting it right when they thought forward, because you always after acquired information always affects your views. You don't remember what you used to think. And so that's just the nature of things. And the people who'll be successful in their lives are the people who are the most flexible, who can absorb the most, who are open to learn, who are coachable, who are not too proud to, dig in to new things.
One of the things that you've often highlighted was part of our forward strategy and confidence that you have in the long term centers around people, and that recruiting is a big part of that. Can you expand on how you think about people in the equation of the Goldman Sachs success formula?
This is a entirely people business. We're, advisors and market makers and investors. The feedstock of our machine is, is people and talent, and we have to, get the best of it. And once we get them, we try to improve what we got and try to make people better. By the way, that's also an iterative thing, because the better people come here because they think it'll be good for them. And then, of course, then you get the best people, and it becomes good for them, because as people grow up in the firm, they, better mentors make better people, and if people come in, they get a sense of what their obligations are to the next generation, and you get a kind of a virtuous circle here. We're very conscious of the people aspect of the business. We spend a lot of time in recruiting people, and we spend a lot more time in developing people once they're here.
Recently, we launched an analyst impact fund, and I want to spend a minute getting your thoughts on that. For everyone's reference, 460 analysts submitted applications, 6 finalists got to pitch to the partnership committee, and 3 groups were awarded $175,000 that were contributed from our partners, and Lloyd then wanted to give personally to those folks that were 4th, 5th, and 6th. You joined us at the partnership committee and heard these presentations. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't know if everybody knows what this is a firm that we do a lot of, a lot of firms do. We particularly do a lot of philanthropy, partners as individuals, but also collectively as a firm. And also we try to do things that not just like write checks, but we try to do things where we use our skills and our background and frankly validate what we do for a living and try to show how that, for public service and public good.
And one of the streams that we focused on as the committee was, the analyst experience, all aspects of it. And we heard time and time again that our analysts really wanted to know how they could make an impact, to really understand how they can leverage the firm to invest in philanthropic organizations that they care about.
So being the way we are, we allow people to form teams all around, around the world, and to promote a particular charity or an institution they wanted to support. Teams of, my observation was anywhere between 3 and 6 people.
That's right.
Got together, and I think we had something like 134 teams get together and promoted a particular philanthropy they were committed to. And then again, in Goldman Sachs style, they prepared, flip books and charts and these things, real kind of downtown kind of presentations that you would do for an IPO pitch or, an M&A pitch, because who knows better how to do this stuff than the analysts. And come in, they made presentations, winnowed it down to 6 groups, and then the partnership sat in judgment. And eventually, and allocated $100,000 for the prize, and then 50 and 25, and then of course we were supposed to send 3 people back, 3 groups away empty-handed, but tugged at our heart, so we gave them money too to give away. We get soft, and then, but it was good, and some of them were real, pretty cool things. So it was good. So that was I thought that was clever.
You came out with earnings yesterday, and your earnings were down a bit from before. The press account said that this was due to the fact that the regulatory environment was forcing firms like yours to change their business model. Do you think that's a fair summary? And what is your view on the Dodd-Frank bill?
Sure. I'd say the biggest effect, and we're quite open in this and have been open at this in good times and bad times, all of our businesses that correlate with growth. We advise companies who make acquisitions or want to sell divisions and implement new strategies, which don't happen, and volumes of that go very low when people are insecure and not feeling good about the world. We finance transactions, and there are fewer transactions to finance when nobody's acquiring assets or investing in their businesses. And we manage money in the asset management business, where the value of what we do and the fees that we take in are better, and there's more opportunity when people are confident enough to pursue riskier assets. And I could tell you, you could not find a part of the cycle where all of those volumes and all those activities would be at a lower ebb. To me, that's the cyclical part of it, and that's what we're living through. And it wasn't that long ago. We had record years as recently as 2009 when, as things were going down. Now that they're down, we're not necessarily waiting. Of course, we're not waiting, but there are certain things that are cycles that it's not very good for us to overreact to. And of course, things that are more secular, which might include regulation, we of course have to react to. I should say, by the way, we react to cycles too, because cycles can be severe and they can last a long time. And if you get killed in the bad part of a cycle because you don't manage your business closely enough, when the cycle turns, you're still dead.
Now, you manage money, your firm does, for lots of wealthy people and institutions around the world. Suppose I was one of your clients and I called you up and said,
Suppose.
I thought you didn't disclose who your investors were. But
I just said suppose. I'm sorry, that was an inflection I didn't intend to provide.
Okay. Just doing treasury bills, but anyway.